When I met David Landreth, I thought this must be the loudest person on the planet. I mean, I grew up in Chicago, and moving down to the South and meeting David, for me, he was like a character out of Hee Haw or something. Here's this, knee slapping, football loving, good old country boy from Cleveland, Tennessee, the hub of the universe, as he always used to say. I mean, he was larger than life. He was brilliant. He was incredibly well read. But then when he'd step up to preach, even though he was towering, even though he had this incredible presence, he was just a friend. He was someone who was easy to connect with, to listen to. David, he was so loud, but he used that loudness to make much of who Jesus was. I mean, David loved Jesus, and he wanted other people to fall in love with Jesus. I'd worked with David for probably about 6 years or so when one Friday morning he called our whole team together, and he told us that he had been diagnosed with this really aggressive form of cancer. And I'll never forget that day, because the air just got sucked out of the room. And I think for me, I was like in a place of denial, because after all, this was David. He's our pastor. He's our leader. He's strong. This can't happen to David. It's like this cloud of darkness had just descended over our land. And we all get that, because we've all seen that cloud of darkness in the distance. We've seen it when we turn on the news and we see a country being torn apart by war, families, communities being torn apart. We see the cloud of darkness when the hurricane sweeps in the state next door, or when racism springs up in the town next door, or when tragedy strikes the home next door. We've all seen the cloud of darkness in the distance, and then one day you wake up and it's above you. One afternoon, I was sitting at home, sitting at the piano, and I was just feeling this immeasurable sadness about David being sick. And in the middle of that, my phone was sitting out, and it suddenly lit up, and it had this news notification, and it said, "Breaking news, the Boston Marathon race has just been bombed." That was like the final straw for me. I couldn't handle all this grief going on in the world. And so I closed my eyes, and somewhere in the middle of that silence, God reminded me of something that David had preached about just a few weeks earlier. He said,
"We don't grieve like the world grieves. We grieve, but not without hope of a further and a better place beyond."
When I opened my eyes, I was suddenly hit with this melody and these words, and so I quickly wrote them down. I wrote, "In the end, love will fill the earth, raising dead to life. In the end, we will see the kingdom come. In the end, all of darkness will be bursting into light, and we will live with you forever in the end." That's the assurance that we have in following Jesus. At the end of 2014, we laid David to rest, and we celebrated his life. We celebrated that even though a cloud of darkness had come over him, that he kept his eyes focused on the light of Jesus. David knew that even cancer would bow to Jesus. I hope that everyone who hears David's story, including everyone at Public Church, that you would come to that same realization that David came to, that God is above all things, that he holds all things together, and that those who know him, those who love him, those who are his sons and daughters, that we will live forever with Jesus in the end.